little bit more about the Bougainville one, just how we collected the stories. So in the Bougainville case, you notice one was collected by an evaluator, that was me, I happened to be there, and the other one was by staff. Generally, MSc is done by staff. They go out and they collect stories, like in outcome mapping, like your observations only. They try to capture the direct words of what somebody has said. And we collect the stories. Very much important is the word around the following question. So the question is, looking back over the last few months, in your opinion, what do you think was the most important change or most significant change that took place as a result of the training and support you've received from Aussie Tanata? But the thing to understand is you never actually ask anybody that question. Because if I said that to you, Steve, you're looking back for the last 3 months, what was the most significant thing that you've got from your learning and education as a result? And you go, So really what you do is you sit down under a tree, you chat to somebody about what's happened, what all the changes might have been, and then you get them to try and identify which is the most important change, and then you invite them to tell a story around that, and you probe around that. How did it happen? Why? When did it begin? Who was involved? And there's a whole way of asking questions to get that story out. But you don't lead, you probe. There's a significant difference. You don't say, what were the changes for your health? What were the changes for your family? What were the changes for this? It's not a questionnaire. The idea is it's an invitation for somebody to tell their story, and you help them tell their story by saying, could you tell me a bit more details about that, and where did it happen, and who was there? So the questions you ask are only aimed to elaborate. You should never give away what you want to know. The idea of MSc is to let go of what you want to know. It's the opposite of outcomes mapping in that sense. Forget what your outcome challenges were. Forget what you were trying to achieve. Leave it all behind. Walk into the community and talk to people about how things are for them, from their point of view, from their values, and then take it back and try and make sense out of it. So it's very much about getting out into the field. That's why it complements stuff that's more about what are we trying to achieve and have we achieved it. I see there's two real different approaches to evaluation. There's what are we trying to achieve and have we achieved it? What are we trying to achieve and have we achieved it? And then there's this other bit that goes, just leave the project behind and go and find out what's happened and then see if they match. And that's when really good.
Who does the writing of the story?
Who does the writing of the story? Normally, ideally, we actually tape the storyteller, the beneficiary, telling their story, and then we type it up. So it's not written. If it is written, it'll be written by the staff, but it's actually supposed to be verbatim. It's not somebody's observations, it's actually an interview. Yeah, it's an interview. You can do it from a focus group too. So in the Aussie Tanata example, the respondents were community members, people who were in the community. But if you had a capacity building project, then the people you would talk to would be, the people you're trying to build the capacity of. Whoever the boundary partner would be, I guess, would be the people you'd collect the story from. And the idea is to do it in a casual environment. And if tape recorders are a problem, then we normally have a chat about the stories the night before and re-record them the next day. And in Aussie Tanata, they collected about 40 stories a year. So that was what they did. And then you get this, then there's a review step. Remember, the next step is to read them out and to select the most significant ones. In the Aussie Tanata case, it was the staff and their community. It's like the steering committee, so some community members and some board members and them would sit around every 6 months. They'd read all the stories out that were collected. They'd try and choose the most significant ones, and they'd say why, and then they'd send the ones that were chosen to their funders. Then the funders sat down and read the stories out and had to choose the most significant ones from their point of view and let the project know. So it's about dialogue between funders, project staff and various people. And it can be done on a very big scale if necessary. Now the third fundamental step is feedback. MSc doesn't work without the feedback loop. The idea is to feed back to the community which are the stories that are valued most widely by the project. And then give the funders feedback as to what you're achieving. And the idea is to have this slow but continual dialogue up and down an organisational hierarchy. So in this case, the stories go up an organisational hierarchy and the feedback comes down. Now you can have 10 levels. They've done the MSc on huge global programs that cross 70 countries. You can do it on a really big scale, but only every little unit only looks at a small number of stories, selects the most significant, sends up the ones to the next level. Do you get the hang of it? It sort of cascades up. So each person only looks at a certain number of stories. Yeah. Now, what's really interesting about MSc is often it reconceptualizes how people think of impact. I think that OM does this as well. People like the Aussie Tinata was a classic example. They were like, we've failed, and we went out and collected these stories. These are 2 stories. I mean, they had so much impact. They're a phenomenal NGO. That's like they're just so incredible. The leader of that NGO, she's been taken all over the place as an amazing woman who can achieve incredible things. They brought communities together that had killed each other's brothers and sisters to work together on projects. So what? They didn't generate a lot of income, but they made clothes, they got food, and they worked together, and there was a lot more harmony as a result, and the stories showed that. And I actually think it was an extremely successful project, and they began to see how they'd been successful. But the performance indicators that somebody else, some consultant from some organisation had told them to use, made them think that they had completely failed. And that was the beginning of me understanding that, wow, MSc, can really capture things that indicators can't, but I think OM would do the same thing. Now, there is a bit more to MSc. It's got 10 steps in total. We start off scoping it up, then we collect a few stories to see what we've got. Then once we've